first sign that something was off came when Garrett Grayson stumbled into the lecture hall 10 minutes late, wearing sunglasses, indoors, clutching a bottle of water like it contained the meaning of life. His usually upright posture was gone, replaced by a sluggish shuffle. Sweat glistened on his forehead, and every few steps he paused, as if the air had become thicker. Professor Ilrich stopped mid-sentence, his translucent skin shifting from soft blue to a pale green hue, a clear sign of concern in his species. "Garrett?" Ilrich tilted his head, the two stalks above his brow quivering. "Are you malfunctioning?" Garrett raised a hand in a vague wave, then slumped into his seat at the back of the room. "Nope, just give me a minute." A murmur cascaded through the class. Most of the students were alien exchange scholars from the Galactic Concord's Interspecies Education Initiative. Many had never seen a human in distress, much less one exhibiting symptoms they couldn't classify. Zern, a tall, crystalline being from the planet Acarus, leaned toward Ilrich. "His fluid levels are imbalanced. He is emitting heat at an alarming rate. Should I call emergency services?" Ilrich gave a cautious nod. "Proceed." From the corner, Drit, a feathered creature with 6 eyes, flicked open a hollow panel and began transmitting a call to the station infirmary. Garrett groaned and rested his head on his desk. "Guys, seriously? I'm fine." Ilrich approached cautiously, as if Garrett might detonate. "You are not fine. You are exhibiting signs of internal collapse. Your ocular orbs are shielded. Your skin tone has shifted. Your speech is slurred." Geary looked up, his eyes bloodshot and glassy. "It's a hangover. Relax." Ilrich paused. What? "A hangover," Garrett repeated, removing his sunglasses with effort. "Had a bit too much last night. Alcohol, ethanol. You guys have that?" Rit fluffed up his neck feathers. "You poisoned yourself for sport?" Garrett tried to sit up straighter, winced, and gave up. "It's a thing humans do. Not our proudest tradition, but it's illegal. Mostly." Zern returned from the hallway. "Medical team en route. Estimated arrival in 90 seconds. Garrett groaned louder. "I don't need a medical team, just electrolytes and a greasy breakfast." Ilrich turned toward the rest of the class. "New lesson objective. Emergency response to human biological destabilization. Garrett, please remain conscious while we observe." "I'm not dying," Garrett protested, but his voice cracked halfway through. Within a minute, 2 medical officers arrived, one human, one from the amphibious Tralith species. The human, a woman with cropped copper hair, knelt beside Garrett. "Mr. Grayson, I'm Officer Lena Marsh," she said. "You're not under arrest, just checking vitals." Garrett made a weak thumbs-up gesture. "Appreciate that." Lena ran a scanner over his chest, then his head. She checked the readout, then looked at Ilrich. "He's not in critical condition. Pulse is elevated, blood pressure low, classic hangover symptoms. No immediate danger." Ilrich blinked slowly. "So this condition, it resolves on its own?" Lena nodded. "With rest, hydration, and preferably no more drinking for a while." Ilrich made a note on his tablet. "Fascinating. And you say this is voluntary?" Garrett sat upright slowly. "Well, nobody forces us. It's kind of a social thing. Celebration, stress relief, bad decisions mostly." Zern looked baffled. "But your cognitive and physical systems are compromised. Is the experience of inebriation worth the aftermath?" Garrett shrugged. "Subjective. Some people say yes. Others quit after the first time." Drit tilted his head. "You were celebrating?" Mitch's voice echoed in the room. Garrett hesitated. "Not exactly, just needed to blow off some steam. Midterms have been rough." Ilrich considered this. "You endangered your health due to academic pressure?" Garrett grimaced. "When you put it like that, yeah, it sounds dumb." Lena stood. "He'll be all right. I'll leave a rehydration pack and some nausea inhibitors." She handed over a pouch and a small tablet, which Garrett took gratefully. Ilrich motioned for the class to settle. "Let us proceed with the lecture." Garrett, you may remain as a passive observer. Gladly, Garrett muttered, leaning his head back against the wall. The next 40 minutes passed, with Ilrix explaining the neural adaptations of various species under duress. Garrett caught snippets, but mostly focused on not throwing up. Occasionally, his classmates glanced back at him, as if he might burst into flames at any moment. After class, Drit approached cautiously. May I inquire further about the nature of this hangover? Garrett rubbed his temples. Sure. What do you want to know? Why would your species design recreational substances that impair function so drastically? Garrett laughed once, then winced. I don't think we designed it. It just happened. Fermentation's been around for thousands of years. We figured out how to drink it before we figured out how to write. Zern joined them. And your governing bodies permit this? Regulated, Garrett replied. Age limits, safety warnings, all that. But yeah, it's legal in most places, just not encouraged the way water is. Drit's feathers twitched. Do you regret your decision? Right now, absolutely. Ah, Garrett stood slowly, using the wall for support. But tomorrow, I'll probably laugh about it. That's the human condition. Do dumb stuff, suffer, learn, maybe repeat. Zern looked genuinely disturbed. This is illogical. Garrett smiled thinly. Welcome to Earth culture. By the time Garrett made it back to his dorm, his headache had dulled to a manageable throb. He poured himself a glass of water, popped the tablet Lena gave him, and laid on his bed. A few minutes later, his roommate, a short moss-colored alien named Velk, entered. You live, Velk observed, his voice buzzing slightly. Barely. Velk dropped onto his own bunk. I reviewed footage from today's lecture. Your condition caused widespread concern. Yeah, I noticed. Velk tapped at his console. I have accessed human data archives. This hangover, it affects cognition, motor function, and emotional regulation. It can lead to dehydration and, in extreme cases, long-term organ damage. Garrett turned his head. You're making me feel great about my life choices, Velk. Velk was silent for a moment. Is this an addiction? Garrett shook his head. No, not for me. Some people, yeah. But this was just a stupid night out with some other exchange students. We got carried away. Velk's eyes blinked sideways. Will you do it again? Garrett stared at the ceiling. Not anytime soon. Velk nodded. Good. I do not wish to carry your unconscious body to the infirmary. Garrett grinned. Thanks, buddy. The next day, Garrett felt marginally human again. He walked into the cafeteria and was immediately met with cautious stares. Drit and Zern stood near the entrance, holding trays of what looked like gelatinous cubes and spiral-shaped roots. Zern stepped forward. Your condition has resolved? Yeah, mostly. Drit tilted his head. We have prepared a restorative meal based on human nutritional recovery data. Would you care to join us? Garrett blinked. You cooked? We synthesized, Zern corrected, using your dietary parameters. The tray contained eggs, toast, and some kind of faux bacon. Garrett sat down and took a bite. This is actually really good. Drit looked pleased. We wanted to help prevent recurrence. Garrett chuckled. Appreciated, and noted. As he ate, more students joined the table, cautiously asking questions about human alcohol, social structures, and risk tolerance. Garrett answered honestly, sometimes sheepishly, sometimes with pride. Ilix passed by and gave a small nod. I see you have become the subject of your own cultural anthropology lesson. Garrett raised his coffee. Living the dream, Professor. Ilix walked on, and Garrett leaned back in his chair. He had made a spectacle of himself, sure. But he'd also started a conversation, bridged a gap, and maybe, just maybe, taught the galaxy's brightest minds a little something about human resilience. Garrett's legs still felt like wet noodles as he stepped into the campus greenhouse dome. The air inside was warm and humid, thick with the scent of alien soil and chlorophyll analogs. He wasn't there for the plants. He was there because it was quiet, shaded, and most importantly, Velk had mentioned that the dome's air filtration systems were calibrated to simulate rainforest environments. That meant oxygen-rich, slightly elevated humidity, perfect for shaking off the last of the fog still wrapped around his brain. He dropped onto one of the stone benches nestled between a cluster of broad-leafed flora and exhaled like someone finishing a marathon. A small winged creature zipped past his ear and vanished into the foliage. He didn't flinch. He barely had the energy to blink. Several minutes passed before he heard the soft clicking of claws on tile. He didn't look up until a shadow fell over his lap. You are not in your dwelling. This contradicts your stated recovery plan. Garrett squinted upward. Hi, Rel. The insectoid being towered over him, multifaceted eyes glinting in the filtered light. Rel's thorax armor was polished to a muted copper sheen, and his upper arms were folded in what Garrett had learned was a posture of concern among his species. I couldn't sleep, Garrett explained. Too much light in the dorm. Thought I'd breathe some plant air for a bit. Rel took a slow step forward, his antennae swaying. There are designated meditation chambers for that purpose. This dome is reserved for xenobotanical research. I'm sitting on a bench, Garrett said, gesturing lazily. The plants seem cool with it. Rel didn't respond immediately, but then lowered himself onto the opposite end of the bench, joints clicking softly. Your behavior yesterday continues to generate discussion across campus. Garrett rubbed his eyes. Great. Some students have requested clarification from faculty. There is speculation you were testing experimental substances. I wasn't, Garrett said. Just ethanol. Pretty basic stuff. Rel's head tilted. You refer to it with casual familiarity. Is this substance frequently ingested by your species? In some cultures, yeah. Others avoid it altogether. Depends on upbringing, religion, laws. It's not universal. Yet the effect is universally disruptive. Garrett shrugged. So is sleep deprivation. Doesn't stop us from pulling all-nighters. That too has come up, Rel said. During finals last term, you remained awake for 36 standard hours and consumed 14 caffeinated beverages. Garrett blinked. You counted? Your activities were logged by the building's biometric monitors. Several anomalies triggered alerts. Garrett leaned back and stared at the glass ceiling. I swear, I'm not trying to be a problem. I'm just trying to pass my courses. Rel didn't move. You are not considered problematic. You are considered anomalous. That's not much better. Incorrect. Anomalies are studied. Problems are avoided. Garrett laughed softly. You guys ever do something irrational just because it feels good? Rel took a moment to process the question. No. Right, Garrett said. Should have guessed. They sat in silence for a while. Somewhere behind them, a vine uncurled and began inching toward a light source. Garrett watched it absently. Eventually, Rel spoke again. I have reviewed human literature on intoxication. There appears to be a recurring theme of seeking relief from internal distress. Garrett didn't answer right away. I guess that's not wrong. Is your presence here distressing? Garrett rubbed his hands together, palms dry despite the humidity. It's not the classes. I like learning about other species, even when I feel like the weirdest one in the room. It's just the pressure. Back home, I wasn't exceptional. Here, I'm the human, the only one in half my lectures. Everyone watches. Every mistake I make feels like a cultural referendum. Rel processed that in silence. Yesterday wasn't about fun, Garrett said. It was about shutting things off for a few hours. Rel's antennae dipped forward slightly. Then, the consequences were self-inflicted. Yeah. I didn't say it was smart. A soft chime echoed through the dome, indicating the top of the next hour. Rel stood, smoothing one of the folds in his uniform with a lower limb. There is a symposium this evening, Interspecies Adaptation Strategies. It may provide insight into stress regulation techniques. Garrett groaned. Sounds dry. Hydration is essential, Rahl said, completely serious. Garrett snorted. I'll think about it. Rel nodded once and walked away, the sound of his steps fading into the ambient hum of the dome's life support systems. Later that evening, Garrett reluctantly entered Lecture Hall 6, where the symposium was already underway. The seating was amphitheater style, and small clusters of species occupied their respective zones. Murmuring softly as a being from the aquatic Neurovians floated in a self-contained hydration globe at the front stage. He found a seat in the upper corner, unnoticed by most, and slumped into the chair, arms folded. A translated voice filtered through the speakers. And while the Ishari employ dream immersion tanks to offload mental strain, the Thoracans utilize muscular vibration rituals to discharge accumulated tension. Garrett blinked. Muscular what? The student next to him, a narrow-bodied being with 3 mouths and no visible eyes, turned toward him. They shake themselves violently. For hours, it is considered sacred. Garrett whispered back. Sounds like a seizure. Your term aligns with several medical conditions. However, theirs is deliberate. Another speaker took the stage, a pale serpentine alien wearing a robe composed of woven petals. Their voice was melodic, almost musical. Among my people, anxiety is considered a communal imbalance. The afflicted are surrounded by harmonic resonance groups to restore equilibrium. Garrett sat up slightly. So, like group therapy? The being turned their gaze toward him without breaking rhythm. It is not therapy. It is alignment. After the next 2 presentations, one involving a species that hibernated for entire weeks to reset their stress levels, another that ingested specific fungi to induce hallucinatory catharsis, Garrett slipped out quietly. No one stopped him. Outside, the air was cooler. He wandered aimlessly until he found himself near the edge of the observation platform overlooking the asteroid ring that circled the station. Belk was already sitting there, legs crossed, holding a steaming cup of something moss-colored. You left the symposium, Velk said. I wasn't vibing with the fungus people. Belk nodded. That segment was intense. Garrett leaned on the railing. Do you ever feel like we're not built for this kind of exchange? Like humans are just too messy? Velk sipped his drink. You think your species is chaotic. Mine communicates through pheromonal pulses. Try maintaining a relationship with someone who smells like your sibling. Garrett laughed. Okay, fair. Velk placed his cup down. Your species survives by improvisation. You adapt emotionally. That is your strength, but also your vulnerability. Garrett watched a mining freighter drift between 2 pale moons. It's just strange. Everyone here has a system, a ritual, a method, a protocol. Humans, we wing it. We crash, then figure out how to rebuild with duct tape and sarcasm. Velk's antennae twitched. And yet, you endure. Pause. Next time you feel overwhelmed, Velk said, you might consider inviting me before you attempt self-intoxication. Garrett turned. You'd come drinking? No, but I would sit beside you until the need passed. Garrett looked out again over the stars. Deal. By the end of the week, the incident had faded into background noise. Other students had their own dramas. Someone accidentally activated a vacuum seal in the biology lab. Another set off a chain reaction in the culinary fusion kitchen that resulted in a 3-day evacuation. Garrett felt less scrutinized, more integrated. Still, he noticed new things. How the cafeteria now stocked a bland porridge listed under human recovery meal. How a few students lingered longer in conversations with him, curiosity replacing caution. On a quiet afternoon, Ilrix approached him outside the library. There is a proposal, the professor said, to formalize a cross-species peer support initiative, student-led. Garrett raised an eyebrow. Because of me? Because of what you revealed? Ilrix replied. Unintentionally, perhaps, but impact is not always tied to intent. Garrett considered that. Would you participate? Ilrix asked. Yeah, Gary said, I think I would. Ilrix offered no expression but tapped something into his device and walked away. Garrett watched him go, then turned toward the library doors. Maybe there wasn't a system for being human in an alien world, but maybe that was the point. Maybe just showing up, even hungover and confused, was enough to start one. The communal lounge in Research Habitat C smelled faintly of ozone and warm starch, which, according to the placard on the wall, meant the ventilation system was functioning within optimal tolerances. Garrett had no idea what that actually meant, but the couch cushions were soft, and he wasn't about to complain after sitting through 3 hours of orbital mechanics taught by a creature that communicated through echo pulses and required a translator to interpret every fourth word. He stretched out across the couch, one hand shielding his eyes from the overhead lumen strips. Before long, a familiar rustle of fibered limbs approached. "You are horizontal," Dredd observed, standing above him with a tray held firm in his secondary wing claw. "Is this due to gravitational fatigue?" "No," Garrett mumbled. "It's due to not being a robot." Dritt tilted his head, feathers shifting subtly. "I have acquired a human snack configuration. It was described as comfort food." He placed the tray on the low table. Garrett sat up reluctantly. "If it's pickles and ice cream, I'm walking into space." "It is salted carbohydrate spirals with synthetic cheese substrate. I was told it induces mild euphoria in your species." Garrett blinked. "Chips and cheese?" Rip nodded. "That..." He picked up one of the curled snacks, cautiously bit into it, and chewed. "Well, they didn't lie." Dritt settled beside him, wings folding neatly. "You appear less disordered today." "I slept properly, hydrated, no ethanol, and I didn't try to solve my stress with 3 hours of terrible decisions." Dritt's eyes flicked toward him. "That is measurable progress?" Garrett leaned back. "Funny how not poisoning yourself improves your day." There was a pause as Dritt adjusted the tray slightly closer. "I have been reviewing your species' early medical treatments," Dritt said. "It appears your ancestors believed in draining blood to restore health." Garrett sighed. "Yeah, we had a whole period where we thought bleeding people would fix fevers. Nearly killed a few presidents doing that." "Your medical history is contradictory." "That was the rest of us." Dritt shifted his talons slightly. "We do not view contradiction as evolution. We eliminate error through successive refinement. Humans don't eliminate things easily. We just pile new ideas on top of old ones and hope the foundation doesn't collapse." Dritt was quiet for a moment. "Then the hangover was not an anomaly. It was a symptom of that structural instability." "Sure," Garrett said. "Or maybe I just screwed up and drank too much." Then the day... They sat in silence for a while, the tray slowly emptying between them. Eventually, Garrett glanced sideways. "You ever screw up, Dritt?" "I once attempted to ingest a nutrient block without allowing it to settle to ambient temperature. My internal linings blistered." Garrett winced. "Yikes." "I did not repeat the error." Garrett wiped cheese dust from his fingers. "See? That's where humans differ. We repeat errors constantly, sometimes on purpose." "Why? Because we think maybe the outcome will be different? Or because we're bored, or lonely, or just don't want to feel like we're stuck?" Dritt considered that. Our behavioral models would classify that as irrational. Garrett nodded. "Most of us would agree." Dritt looked at him for a long time, then plucked one of the spirals. He held it up, examined it, then cautiously took a small bite. His feathers trembled slightly. "This is aggressively flavored." Garrett grinned. "Welcome to human cuisine. If it's not trying to kill you, it's not authentic." Dritt placed the rest of it back on the tray. "We are not designed for such volatility." A chime echoed from the corridor. Garrett checked the wall display. "Oh, great. I have a check-in with the counselor in 10. You are being evaluated?" "It's not mandatory. More like encouraged. After the hangover thing, Velk signed me up. Said I should recalibrate my internal metrics." Dritz fluffed his feathers slightly. "That is a poetic interpretation of mental health support." "Yeah, he's good at that." Garrett stood, brushing crumbs off his pants. Thanks for the cheese spirals. You didn't have to. I did not want to witness another episode. Garrett smiled faintly. Neither did I. He made his way down the corridor, passing a group of floating Marnari students whose gelatinous bodies shimmered with mood-lit pulses. One of them waved a pseudopod. Garrett returned the gesture without breaking stride. The counselor's office was located in a quieter wing, tucked between a meditation alcove and a biofeedback lab. He pressed the door sensor and it slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, Counselor Jalaya stood from her desk. She was tall, slender, with skin like polished brass and eyes that reflected faintly like the surface of deep water. "Garrett," she said, "please, sit." He dropped into the chair across from her, resisting the urge to slouch. "I understand you've had a challenging week." "That's putting it nicely." "I reviewed the incident log," she said, "and the subsequent reports. Do you feel the incident represents an ongoing pattern?" He shook his head. "No. It was an isolated mess. I made a bad choice and it caught up with me. I'm not here to judge, I'm here to understand what led to that choice." Garrett hesitated. Pressure, expectations, being the only human in a lot of rooms. I wanted a break, and I took a shortcut. Do you often feel isolated?" "Not always, but when I do, it hits hard. Everyone else here seems to have coping systems hardwired. I have streaming playlists and overpriced coffee." Jalea nodded. "You are not required to process things the way others do, but you are responsible for knowing your limits." "I know," he said. "I pushed past mine." "You're not alone in that. Many students struggle with adjustment. You just had the misfortune of doing it in front of 20 witnesses and a professor who documents everything." Garrett chuckled. "Yeah, that didn't help. But it would help." He thought for a moment. "Conversations, honest ones, like this, like with Drit or Velk. Not pretending I've got it all handled." Leah leaned forward slightly. "Would you say you're learning how to manage stress more constructively?" "I think so. I'm trying anyway." She tapped her desk once. "That's sufficient for now. Keep trying." Garrett stood. "Thanks." As he turned to leave, she added, "And Garrett?" He paused. "You're not the only anomaly here, just the most visible one. That doesn't mean you're the problem. Sometimes you're the mirror." He nodded once and stepped into the corridor. Later that evening, he joined a small gathering in the central atrium. Students from 6 different species were seated in a loose circle, exchanging stories about the most confusing things they'd encountered on the station. Someone from a high-gravity world described their first experience with a trampoline. A student from a methane-breathing species had mistaken a fire alarm for a mating signal. Garrett shared a brief, sanitized version of his hangover tale, and the laughter that followed was warm, not mocking. By the end of the hour, someone passed around a tray of neutralized fruit cubes. Garrett took one, bit into it, and frowned. "Tastes like a damp sock." Drit, seated 2 spots away, called out, "Then it is working as designed?" Garrett raised the cube in a mock toast. "To weird systems that somehow keep functioning." Several students echoed the gesture, and for the first time since he arrived, Garrett didn't feel like a curiosity or a cautionary tale. He just felt human. And for once, that was enough.